Hey guys, welcome to another Bitter Butter Render Blender tutorial, and today I'll be showing you how to create this awesome caustic effect without actually using caustics. So the first thing you might think of when you think of caustics is these complex math equations that Blender has to solve in order to get, well, realistic light physics. And there's always been an issue with that where it would take a very simple scene and make the render time super long. Let's just figure out a simple way to combat that. So over here, I'm just gonna set up my scene. We're gonna add a basic plane, and then we're gonna set up a light, specifically a spotlight, because the other lights diffuse differently and it doesn't work that well for this method. After that, we're just gonna go ahead to the world properties and we're gonna change the strength all the way down to 0. We just want it to be super dark so we can actually see what the caustics look like. Remember, you can change these settings later on. In the render, we're gonna go cycles and GPU, and over here we're going to go into the shading properties now, and we're going to add a new texture and make the base color pure black, and also the roughness just ever so slightly more rough so you can see more clear on what's happening without all the glossy effects. Now with the light selected, we're going to go into render properties and we're going to click use nodes, and this is where the magic happens. So right now you can't really see much of what's going on, and that's because of the strength. We'll just turn that up to something like 12, and then over here in the light settings we can change the power to something a lot higher. In this case, I'm just gonna go with 1060. That looks good. So the basic of what's happening is we're gonna take two Voronoi textures and we're gonna mix them and find the difference between them, and you'll understand what I mean when you look at what a Voronoi texture looks like. So we'll just go ahead and do that. We'll add a Voronoi texture. We'll make sure it's 40 and smooth F1 instead of just F1. We're gonna duplicate it, add a mix color, plug in the result into color, and then we're gonna change the mix value to actually difference. And then we can plug in the distance, remember not the color, the distance, into factor A, and distance into the input of B. And right now you can't see anything, and that's because we haven't really set up a coordination for these nodes. So make sure you have the inbuilt node wrangler add-on enabled, and then click on the node and click Control T, and this would add these two nodes, a texture coordinate and mapping. And you still can't see anything, but before we change anything, we'll plug in the vector into the vector of the second one. This is so both of them work simultaneously. And here's the magic. We're going to plug in normal into vector instead of generated, and as you can see, you can already start seeing some patterns emerging, I guess. Now what we want to do is, as you can see, we have the W factor, the scale, the smoothness, and the randomness. These are the factors you want to alter to get the caustics look, and we obviously can go around changing them separately, but it's smarter if we use a singular driver to alter each value simultaneously. So to do that, we're going to click on Shift A and add a value node, and we're going to click F2 to rename it into animation. We're going to plug in that value into the W and that value into the W. And for the smoothness value for the top one, you actually want to add a math node and plug that into there. You don't really need to change the other values too much. And then again, one last time, we're gonna Shift D to duplicate, and we're gonna rename this to randomness. And we're gonna plug in the value here, and we're gonna plug in the value here. Alright, as you can see, everything disappeared, and that's due to the values literally being 0. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and mess with these values until something looks good. And remember, this is subjective to your own scene, so don't copy everything I do. Just make sure you go into your own scene and figure out what values look the best. Now the first thing I want to change, and the first thing I suggest you start to alter, is the scale. If I go with something like 21, it looks alright, and as you can see, it looks like a grid, and water caustics aren't this perfect, and that's when the randomness value comes in. Over here in the randomness, I'm going to alter them until I find something that looks good. In my case, I'm going to go with something around 0.9. And as you can see, we're already getting that caustics look, but there's still more we can improve on, such as the smoothness. And the smoothness, really just mess with it and see what looks good. It just makes it a little more fuzzier. Alright, once we've gotten that, as you can see, we've gotten the base, well, caustics look. but it's kind of fuzzy and the transition between them don't look as good as we want, and that's when the handy color ramp node comes in, and we're going to plug that right into this area. So we're going to search up color ramp, we're going to plug it in here, and instead of linear we want B-spline. And then now this is really up to your scene and what you want the caustics to look like, but in my case I just added a singular value in the middle and made it slightly darker and just kind of changed it a little to get that look. Now in this case it's a little faded out, but you can really solve that by changing the emission strength to something brighter, or the power as well. That's like the base look. Now the last thing you might want to do is actually animate it, and the cool thing is, for some reason, just using the W factor of these two of Voronoi texture already looks like that awesome random caustics effect you get when water is moving around and light is reflecting off it. And with the animation, don't go for something too high or else you're just gonna get these really staggered effect. Instead you want to start with something very small and will move by very small increments. In my case I just went for something like 0.01, and if you were to play that back after animating you would get that smooth look. And that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you liked this. Make sure to like, hit that notification and the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.